Good morning, everyone. When I was 8 in second grade, I remember I was in a class, Miss Fife's class. She was a woman who was, at least at the time, not exactly known for her compassion, more known for her directness, to put it politely. She pulled me aside when we came back from winter break, and she said something to me that completely changed my outlook on my life at the time. Around Thanksgiving of that year, before we went out on break, my father, who was and still is, a Teamster welder, his shop went out on strike. And that Christmas was very rough. I think the only toy that I remember getting that was worth playing was a A-team board game between myself and my brother. And she pulled me aside because she apparently had a family member who also worked at the same shop. And she asked me if I was proud of what my father had done. And to be honest, I was pretty angry at him at the time. I was angry because it seemed like Thanksgiving and Christmas, a time where you're supposed to, to be able to eat merrily and enjoy as a child all kinds of gifts and time together as your family, was full of conflict, strife. He was never around, and it was frustrating. But when she asked me if I was proud of my father, I just kind of looked at her with a very puzzled look, and she said, "They won. They won their strike. Aren't you proud that he was part of doing that for him and all the other workers at that factory?" And it completely and radically changed the way that I looked at what my father did and the way that I looked at life. And that was really just a microcosmic example of the way in which public education altered my life completely. And I realized, looking back, when I was asked, why did I become a teacher? It was because I wanted to be part of that experience. I wanted to be part of the experience that made me go from being a child, a working class child of a mother who was raised on a poor farm where the words vacation, sick day, and day off didn't exist, because if you didn't work, you didn't eat. A father who worked in the same shop as his father before him. Public education gave me the power and empowered me to experience worlds much grander than what my past had destined me for. I wanted to be a part of changing other working class children's lives in the same way that education had done that for me. So I became the first to go to college and graduate from college out of anyone in my family. I became the first to travel internationally and literally see worlds much different than my own. And I became the first, I felt, in my family to truly understand that knowledge is the power to shape yourself and the world around you. And teachers were a big part of that. I had teachers who exposed me to books that had ideas in them that kept me up at night, kept me thinking about what this world could be and what it was and how we could get from point A to point B. I had teachers who talked about their international travels, who had scars on their body that they would proudly show off in class, talking about running with the Bulls in Spain and how they got to that point and how that was a meaningful experience for them and how they would travel with their sports team that they were a part of. And I was amazed by the stories that they shared in class, both real and fiction. And I wanted to do the same with my own students. And I'm sure we've all had students like this. When I became a teacher at the ripe age of 22, I got a job in Cleveland Public. That was in 2001, in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. It was a middle school. Middle school is rough. I don't care what school district you teach in. I have a middle school daughter, so unfortunately my household is like a middle school all the time now. But teaching in Mount Pleasant was particularly hard. It was a neighborhood that was hit by the predatory mortgage crisis well ahead of 2008's crash. It was a neighborhood rife with unemployment and all kinds of other social and economic crisis. And I had students, though, that affirmed why I went into teaching. And students like Vincent Hooks, I'm sure we've had students like this, who never has met his father to this day, and yet would come into school every day with an enthusiasm for learning that was just unparalleled. And even when you thought he wasn't paying attention, he would raise his head up, and raise his hand and give a phenomenal answer that you just did not expect from a seventh grader who was being raised by his grandmother, doing the best that she could do. I had students like Ronell Ace, who could barely read or write, to be honest, definitely not on the 7th grade level. But when we did a mock trial of Christopher Columbus, when we put him on trial for crimes against humanity in 7th grade, Ronell wanted to be the head prosecutor, and he took center stage, and he shined. And that made me realize that some kids, while not being able to read or write, it doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. And to be honest, I had students like Brandon Smith that first year who, no matter how many times we had a little sit down after class, after school, no matter what I said to him, it wasn't enough to draw him away from the streets, and he wound up being wrapped up very early on in the criminal justice system and was not able to get away from that. And last I heard, he's still there, unfortunately. And all three of those students are students that we've had, like students that we've had, and students that we'll continue to have. And we won't definitely give up on the Vincent Hooks. We won't give up on the Ronell Aces, and we'll keep trying with the Brandon Smiths. And I know that all of us here today feel the same as I did why I originally got into teaching. We just want to be a part of making this new world and the shell of the old, and I'm glad that we can do that again this year. Thank you.